Welcome to the Connected Workforce Enabling Enterprise AR/VR and Wearables with Other Emerging Technologies session here at EWTS 2021. I'm your moderator for this panel, Shawn McCoy, and it's been an absolute pleasure to prepare for this and meet these gentlemen and talk a little bit about this technology and some of the things that we're doing out in that world. One of the things I did was go back and listen to some of the previous panels, and I would encourage you to go back and listen to some of those from this year and from previous, just because there was so much information out there that just never seems to get old. And I just want to thank Andrew and Brian there at Brain Exchange for making this such an easy process and putting together such a great panel for this one. One of the things I looked at, a lot of new faces, a lot of new companies that are being represented here on this panel. But this panel is not going to disappoint in terms of things that we're going to look at. We have prominent construction manufacturing equipment suppliers, long-standing U.S. defense contracting companies, leaders in smart agriculture and machinery, and large-scale pharmaceuticals. And that's quite a diverse group of people and industries to draw from. But as we talked about through this and we got prepared, one of the themes that came up is big companies are great, but it's really about people. And some of that was around this idea of technology and innovation can make the impossible possible, but that begins and ends with people. And so to that, there's no better example that I think right now that we're seeing this kind of play through than the pandemic. And what we're noticing, and what I noticed in those previous panels, and what I hear talking about every day and things like this, is that the things before that we thought were just great to have might be nice to help us improve efficiencies, or this emerging tech that may be too expensive or whatnot has become a reality. And it's not a matter of if we're going to do these things or if we're going to use these technologies, but how do we do that? And so one of the people that came that really kind of stood out to me in those previous panels as well was Dr. Brian Laughlin from Boeing. And he said something that really stuck with me. And that was, when you buy a drill, you don't buy a drill because you need a drill. You drill it, you buy it because you need a hole. And I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so I don't know about you, but when I buy a drill or something like that that's expensive or a little bit starts to get complicated in those areas, I like to ask people, why did you buy that drill? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And get other people's advice and things of that nature. So that's really the essence of what we're going to be able to do here, is to dive in and there's over 100 years worth of professional experience on this panel. So we can definitely have some people to ask questions of and get that insight and experience. So I'm going to introduce the panel real quick and then we'll get started. But we have Brent Ruth, who's the lean digital transformation leader at Caterpillar, as well as Shawn Franklin, who's the manufacturing systems analyst for Caterpillar as well. We have Nick Castillo, who's the engagement lead of the Immersive Design Center at Raytheon. And we have Rick Reuter, who is the global manufacturing 4.0 transformation lead at AGCO. And we have Szczepan, Baran, who's the head of emerging technologies at Novartis. And a little bit of help with Szczepan's name. It's Polish for Stephen or Esteban or Stefan, or you could use what his wife uses, and you can say Szczepan as well. And we just want to get that kind of thing right. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive right in. Shawn, Brent, as you know, we discussed before, I want to start a question with you guys. With this integration that you guys have been able to, I don't want to say forced to, but as you've been able to find that integration and adoption for wearables, technology variables, you haven't just been able to do that, or you haven't just been able to see that happen, but it's really become a core part of your businesses and what you all have seen over the last 12 to 18 months. And so Brent, would love to start with you, and Shawn, have you come in and dive and add some points to it after that. But give us a little bit of an idea of where you all have been and where you've been personally and what you've experienced around that idea.
Thank you, Shawn. And I'd just like to begin that Shawn and I are represented today as thought leaders and are not representing Caterpillar, Inc. But with that, I would like to say that one of the things the pandemic has shown us, I think everyone understands the impact this has had on travel, both domestic and international. Going from 1K to no K is very painful activity, but there are still business processes that have to be accomplished. The beast must be fed. And so what we've seen is a rapid accelerated adoption of AR technologies in direct support of our business needs. Being able to use this technology to do certified builds, teardowns, maintenance, and over-the-shoulder expertise has been absolutely fundamental to continued operations around the world and has been an accelerator of our overall digital transformation. Shawn?
Absolutely, I agree. the speed at which COVID came and everything came to a screeching stop was a surprise for everybody. I think we all can agree back in 2020. That extra 20 is the 20 pounds some of us gained in 2020. But the continuity of business and continuing that was key. And as we looked for those strategic solutions and moving into those new platforms and that unknown technology and those spaces where security didn't want us to be in the past, it was immediately clear that we had to go there. And we had to flesh these things out and get them in as quickly as possible so that we could continue that continuity.
Well, Brent, if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit, as much as you can, talk a little bit about, there isn't just the adoption of this, but from one of the things that stood out to me was that these were certified processes, teardowns and rebuilds in that context that instead of it just being like a patchwork, this is something that you're actually doing that's fundamental to the operations of your business.
Yes, absolutely. Some good examples would be Caterpillar has an extended global dealer network. And in some instances, as you can imagine, some large mine sites could be in the center of Australia. And how you would support those even in person becomes very difficult. Instead of being able to muster a cross-functional team of experts to swarm a site, now you're able to do that with a limited amount of technicians, but who bring a veritable virtual army to be able to look over their shoulders and be able to see, address, and annotate in their field of view those things that need to be both captured and addressed.
And Shawn, I know that you were really critical or crucial in that whole process with that conversion. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience around that?
Yeah, we were already looking at another product with PTC, and that's where the thought came from for me to use a product that they had and couple it with the RealWear headsets so some of the RealWear headsets that we utilize today to continue that business process. And those processes are critical because if you can't have your engineering department pick up and go, and certify those builds, then your R&D department doesn't get to kick those new changes out, right? So going to the headsets with the engineering department saying, here, put this on, this is the future. This is what we've been playing with over here, in the background. But now I think it's crucial that we bring it to the forefront now and move forward with this. And then when I went to RealWear and had the idea of using their product, they said, oh, hey, by the way, we're working with Microsoft Teams as one of the products that we utilize now, which was a big opener for us, as getting everybody in that team, that engineering team. I have 30 people that need to see this build, but I can only have 2 people on the floor and they have to be 6 feet apart. So how do I do that? And Microsoft Teams was a big part of that. And there's several other products, obviously, but that's the one that opened it all up in the beginning. And Microsoft, can't say enough about them. Working with them, very simple, so easy. Direct feedback back into the GA version that was coming out. RealWear, right on point with all of their hardware and their upgrades that they've come out with, especially with their image stability. On their latest version 12 release was crucial for our teams.
Yeah, I think a lot of us used what we had lying around. AGCO was experimenting with using the Microsoft HoloLens for various applications, and when the pandemic hit, we had some product audits that were happening across the globe, and design engineers from most of the continents that couldn't travel, and to put the HoloLens on a user in one of the factories and have all those global engineers, quality engineers, manufacturing engineers be able to participate in a product audit kind of in that first person view is very powerful. In fact, we learned that it almost has more benefit than flying a bunch of people there. When you have a room or a virtual room full of 30, 40 people looking over a product piece by piece, making decisions, is this designed right? Should this be a plastic part or a metal part? Kind of going through that audit. Everybody was focused on what was being presented on Microsoft HoloLens. It used Dynamic 365, so it's like a Teams experience. And I think everybody was engaged, and there was a lot of good questions coming from all those groups. Prior to that, there was a lot of side conversations. You physically can't fit 40 people around apart and have a conversation that's effective about it. So we noticed a huge benefit. We may not go back.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree completely. What we saw also was, hey, where'd Bob go? We need Bob now, but Bob's off getting a, cup of coffee or perhaps, but everybody's so engaged because it's right there in your face, and it's only what the view is at that time. So completely agree.
It's a great point, Rick. Great point. And so I want to go to Nick a little bit. This is a little bit of a segue. Same deal. I don't think, as you mentioned before in our conversation, nobody really was ready for all of this, but the time to do something was now. And I know you have this remote visualization assistance program that's been created as a result, and you had your own unique challenges. Can you tell us a little about the journey that you've gone through in the last 18 months or so?
So what it really was born on is that we had tech already in place, and it's now how do we reuse it. We've been pushing the remote assistance training, remote assistance for operators, just as many remote presence things that we could do. And it was how do we actually put those things together. So as just previously stated, how you had operators on the end all gathered around one part, trying to look at it, we started to find, the human errors that were being caused by that type of camera. And so if you're holding a camera on site trying to tell the operators what to do, you're telling them to move left and they move right. And you're telling, oh, I'm at your left. And, and there's a lot of time wasted on trying to get where they need to be, or now you need to get closer, zoom in, zoom out. Can you stop being shaky because I can't really read that part on Zoom, kind of thing. So we decided to make a robotic mount, a robotic arm with the camera to be able to hold the part, as it were, and the end user is the one who actually controls where that is. So if they need to move left, it's their screen left instead of the actual on-site left. And so those kind of things where they could physically move the camera in, and then we also have digital zoom to help with that as well. And so that really saved a lot of time when we were doing these events, and we're trying to figure out how we can apply those to a lot more areas now. Can we put them on our smart workstations? Can we use them for, as a dev kit for something else? There's a lot of reuse of the tech that we have, but it wasn't even really very smart cameras. It was just our regular webcams because they wanted to keep it low cost, something that's already been approved through security, so we don't have to go through those hurdles. There was a lot of that kind of exploration to get to where we needed to go. I will say that our security, because of who I work for, is very stringent, and we have to be very cautious with how we put things on the internet, is how I'll say. So, being remote is a hard thing for them, and it's a hard yes or hard no most of the time for them. So to get it proved through our system so that we could actually deploy these all over and make sure that everybody is happy with how they're running was a hard thing with security. When COVID happened, they started to relax those settings because of this work from home. We started to prove that we can do these things, which we've already been trying to do forever. And now they're like, oh, well, we'll adopt right now because we have to. We everybody's work from home. We cannot send people out. We can't travel. We can't. So all the things that we were pushing that were already we can have now become a we can. And so that shortened that cycle of adoption. And so now we're able to continue forward with these, as I will call the simpler kind of connections to now enable us to do more robust connections, and with the HoloLens 2s, with all types of different types of devices that were originally keep outs are now what everybody's adopting. That's the second thing, right? Is COVID also brought the adoption of using the technology. A lot of people were like, no, I cannot use a HoloLens or a HoloLens 2 or any kind of VR device. Sorry, I need my desktop, and now we've said we can actually put these devices in people's hands, and they're adopting them much quicker. So we can, if we keep it device agnostic, right, where we can use our monitors, and we can use our HoloLenses, we can use our VR headsets and so on. If we at least are able to stream them to multiple inputs and outputs, it serves a greater community.
No, it's amazing to hear you when you were talking about that kind of adoption that quickly for groups and for organizations that aren't typically known for that. So it's encouraging as well. And so Rick, I think one of my favorite parts of us preparing for all of this was when Ronnie and I were talking to you. With what we do on a day-to-day basis at my company, typically integration and adoption of these things is not only hard to get, whether it's budget or something like that, but then just the people. You get the old grumpy, I don't want to do it that way. I don't want to eat my broccoli, even though it's good for me, kind of thing. And we made the mistake of asking you during some of your recent transitions around technology if that was your same experience. And yet, with what you've been going through recently, that actually wasn't the case, and the situation was a little bit different than most. Because you tell us a little about your the paradox between your manufacturing process and your products, and how y'all were able to do some things recently around this technology adoption and integration?
Yeah, so let me this was obviously pre-COVID, but we've been going down a long lean manufacturing journey and really took problem solving as far as we could, and are still, of course, developing and continuing it. But we've enabled our people on the shop floor to put in employee suggestions and track that and give them time in the day, even an hour a week in some sites, to work on the things they want to improve upon. And so we've instilled this culture of trying things and wanting to do things. And that group was always seeing what was happening on our product side. So our tractors, our combines, our sprayers, our planters, they're all smart now. They're all connected. They give off all the telemetry data. Farmers can not really have to drive through the field. They just sit back and auto guidance can take over. Seed population can vary through the field based upon how much capability the soil has. And so all this smart technology has been put into our products. And manufacturing, I think, has felt left out. So when we started driving these wearable concepts or ability to use augmented reality on the production floor, it was embraced because people on the shop floor saw that as another tool to solve a problem with. So they've always had an issue seeing work instructions. They've always had an issue knowing what parts should be on a highly customized unit. And then to get tools that can show them that pretty easily, that are connected and always up to date, it's embraced quite well in our shop floor. So yeah, adoption is getting easy for us.
And so what I love about that is it brings to mind culture. It brings to mind that what that is like. And so can you maybe tell those listening a little bit about some of the things that help that culture, continue along that line, and where some of the impetuses or some of the forces that make that possible within what y'all are doing?
From a global standpoint, we have teams set up that focus on the technology. We call them Center of Excellence. And then that group will look at the technology and do a proof of concept on it. With that global input, they'll pick a site that has maybe the biggest problem and ask for it the most. Let's say material handling or logistics issues and traffic management, and AGVs might have been a solution. So they adopted the latest AMRs, autonomous mobile robot technology, and they vetted that out, and they got all the requirements from all the sites. We now realize that the SLAM navigation style AMRs work great in certain settings where the surrounding doesn't change a lot, and they're almost plug and play now. We deploy them at 6, 7, 8 of our manufacturing sites within this last year, just because 2-3 years ago we did a proof of concept with a problem that the site was having, and so that's kind of the culture side of it, and how we really engage that global team with everybody involved.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I love the idea of an encouraging, excited workforce ready to adopt that kind of thing, and I'm sure that was just extremely beneficial. So yes, excellent. And so so Szczepan, we talked about our theme is starting with people and ending with people. We're not over, but I definitely think that one of the things when we talk to you about technology and wearables relative to what you are doing in the pharmaceutical side, it's easy to get lost in some of the results around, ROI and revenue and productivity and all these things that are super important. And not only do people make that happen, but there's also people that are impacted by these technologies and benefited from it. And so there was a couple of things that really stood out when we were talking that I'd love you to kind of dive into a little bit more. Some is around, just understanding the different data and how technology and wearables can impact chemists and biologists talking and discussing around certain things, which we would think are the same language, but aren't always. And then also touch base a little bit on the part that the ER evaluation, when a person is being evaluated as a patient, and how the traditional method is pretty much 70% of what the doctor knows, and they can be very competent, 30% data, and how you talked about, we really want to kind of flip that idea in terms of how that can help us in regards to patient care and patient protocols and evaluation. So can you touch base on some of that for us? That'd be great.
No, definitely. And it runs quite a bit, right, with the other themes that others have already said in other industries. So for us, when you look at from the drug discovery and development part, at the earlier stages, where we're looking at different compounds and trying to visualize them, how they fit into the receptors. So the chemists and biologists actually talk very different languages. It's almost like speaking Spanish and Polish. So being able to visualize the molecule in a 3D environment and the receptors and how they fit in and how they don't fit in. And then you have all of the experts, right? They can be anywhere at our facilities in Europe, Shanghai, and then also here, for example, in Cambridge. So that's one use case. The other use cases that, we have utilized is also for cells, for different therapies, especially some of the novel therapies that came out within the last couple of years, like CCAR, is also, keeping the cells aseptic, right? So for us, training personnel in physical facilities is very challenging at a very fast pace. So putting those labs actually virtually, and for the folks going through the virtual training through that, and then stepping into the physical room, helped us expedite the process. So then we were actually being able to get those treatments to patients faster. You also have, I'm not going to jump into like the operational aspects that other folks give examples, looking at various machines, that you can, get your technology providers for the machine, to look at it when they're not on site, right? As with COVID, travel was challenging. But I think also the other part is for patients, right? So for us, at least that's the main reason why I come into work, right? Is to get medicines to patients that are safe and effective. And so for us, assessing the patients and working the patients is another area where this technology could have an impact. And I think, what you reference, right? So a couple years back on NPR, there was a ER doctor, and he was saying, the 70% of his decision making is his expertise. The other 30 is database, right? So one, I guess that what I took away from it is you better have an awesome physician if you go to ER to make sure you can, I guess, go to the next stage and live. But I guess that also brings the idea, right? So when we collect the information with these technologies, the videos, images from the patients, that down the road, we're going to be able to apply machine learning tools on that and extract information from this data. And then we can flip that around, right? Then now our decisions are being made, assisted with the data that's coming out versus just our expertise. And another example, right, when we're working on a discovery side, right, and we need to assess, for example, animals, or on a clinical part, patients. So on a preclinical side, when you have to have various stakeholders, an animal technician, a veterinary technician come in, and a scientist into a room to assess the animal, it's stressful for the animals. But then it also has an impact on everybody going in at the same time. So you risk the biocontamination risk goes up. So now when you have one person in a room and you can see the animal and the other folks are online and just providing decisions and making, sure the animal's okay, and then what the next step is, it's really operationally efficient, allows us to also raise the animal well-being part as well. But it's the same thing with the patients, where we would be able to assess patients at home. Again, we're not there yet. Some of the challenges that were mentioned already were security, so placing those technologies on our networks is still something that we need to figure out how we can do that on scale, right? On pilot and on POCs, it's pretty straightforward, but when you want to scale it, it's a whole different discussion. So those are some of the aspects that we still need to work out. And obviously there's a regulatory part also, right? So with some internal decision-making processes, we can utilize the technology, but when you step into patients, you have the regulatory framework, which you need to guide through. And we're still very, very early stages there with these technologies.
Well, it's like you said, Szczepan, it's obviously a different application, a different industry, but kind of that same need to take that data. How do you do something with it? How do you compile it? And then how do you apply it back to do something beneficial with it, with that information? And so in the spirit of that, one of the things that one of the two questions when we met previously, that stirred up a lot of really great discussion that I want to throw out there and for this next stage with is one of two questions, and you guys get a chance to choose as I call upon you, and then anybody else, please feel free to follow up afterwards. We'll go through each person, but so Nick, I want to start with you for this one. And so pick your question. One of them is, what are you seeing as potential emerging technologies that interest you in terms of future applications or adding it to what you're doing? And I know emerging technologies may sound like a broad statement, so to kind of qualify a little bit, some of the areas, 5G, AI, big data, digital twins, drones, 3D printing, machine learning, things like that. And I will caveat just a bit. I know if you're like me, you've heard of Dippin' Dots and seen them as the ice cream of the future for the last 30 years. 3D printing, AI may not be completely emerging, but maybe talk about how those are internally, maybe how those are evolving in their applications and why that may matter. So that's as a first question to choose from, Nick. And the second one could be, if a potential supplier vendor, is those people that are out there developing these technologies, or like, hey, this is a great answer to your problem, and they do. They see companies, they see potential customers, and they want to bring that technology to you in terms of what's the best way to present new and exciting things that are happening and some things that they should know coming into it. So pick which one of those two sound good to you, and we'll get started on that conversation.
All right, sure. I'll talk about emerging tech. I think that, again, we like to reuse some of the tech that we have, and marry them into different applications or different use cases for that tech. We are heavily investing right now in Industry 4.0. That I'm also, I do terrestrial laser scanning by trade as well. And so being able to marry that data, with the on-site actual real world is a huge thing for us right now. How to track how to track our assets live and also marry it to real world objects, which makes an Industry 4.0 thing, not just a digital twin. I like to say digital double because they get to be very, very mixed up in wording around the industry right now. So, I create digital doubles, and then those help become digital twins that feed into the Industry 4.0 stuff. So it's not just that, but also how do we tie those into some of the smart engineering practices using those smart workstations, the VR headsets, the virtual work instructions, to make the shop floor easier, all those kind of things. It's all these things that are now becoming more in the adolescent stage instead of the infancy stage, that we can actually start to bring these companies in and their solutions where they work. So I'll tie into the second question you have, is because we have to be very careful when we adopt these things. When we talk to these vendors, we don't want vaporware. We need something that works now. We don't need to be. Although we do invest in how the technology does evolve and partner with them on that kind of thing, so that we can make a better, robust solution in the future. We also need things that work now. And so we don't need it to be disconnected and fighting, because that doesn't help anybody in the now. And that's where we've become in this age as of the now. So we need to be able to adopt and make things work right away.
Yeah. So Brent and Shawn, I know that y'all would like to take a stab at the question, or either one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start and then I'll hand off to Shawn. But one of the interesting things that we're watching very excitedly is about the intersection of AI and XR. And quite honestly, I thought we were years away from this, but this is now practical examples are in the wild natively now as we speak. But this is an ability to have AI sit on top of your XR application and not only guide a technician or a assembler or quality through a operation, guide them through, show them, pull in 3D models, expose what needs to be done, but then also tell them when they've missed something. Or just say you missed a bolt, or the dual cone seal that you just installed is upside down, right? We see extremely I think, very robust applications of that will be, quite frankly, very changing in the marketplace. Shawn?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we'll take a half step back to Rick. We haven't, in my opinion, we haven't gotten too much pushback, I guess you should say, from people wanting to adopt these technologies. We have that generation now out on our floors and our assembly lines and our quality folks that are younger than the ones that are leaving us, unfortunately, with all the knowledge. But we have that capture capability now to capture their knowledge before they leave, and then present it to these younger folks, I guess you could say, and utilize that knowledge in a just-in-time instance. Certainly don't want to overwhelm that frontline worker as we move into this new space. It can be very overwhelming at first to put the gear on, or to have something come down and pop up in your vision that's not quite there. So I guess I see the future frontline type worker as the most technologically advanced person coming here in the near future.
And so to that, so Brent, Shawn, if you could elaborate a little bit more, as much as you can, mind you, around, or just what impresses you in terms of presentations. What's the best way to have that technology presented to you in terms of just getting your attention, or how they should do it, or things they should consider in regards to providing that information for new technologies and such?
Yeah, absolutely. It can't be from a rip and replace standpoint only, unless you're born digital, which some companies have that luxury. But for large incumbents, that becomes almost a non-starter to begin with. And also, as we start to introduce AI, we have to understand the data requirements that are responsible for that, and the product volumes that we would need to do that. So, for example, using a standard unsupervised machine learning model, it would take over 1,153 years to get the data necessary to build a unsupervised model. All right, supervised, now it's down to 330 years, right? It still can't do that. And then actually moving that several orders of magnitude down to say, now we need something that we can do in weeks and months. And I think better understanding the requirements and the product volumes are very important to us.
Absolutely. And to follow that up, we don't want to forget our networks. I don't know about a lot of other facilities, but then our networks have grown organically as needed over the years. And just having that robust, network architecture is key to a lot of these technologies, which we've ran into a couple of those problems with bandwidth capabilities and things. So we definitely don't want to forget that moving forward with any technologies.
Yeah, no, of course. Great points. And Szczepan, I want to go to you next about those two questions. Does either one of those stand out? And how would you like to answer those?
No, it does. I mean, so kind of similar aspects that others have already brought out. But I guess one to me that comes out is just being honest about your technology, right? So there's often that, we just hype up the technology, right? It can do everything that you want, right? And we know it can't, right? So unless I'm not aware of one that is. So I think just being honest, right? Because when we run a POC or MVP and we find out, right, it doesn't do 70% of what you promised or what the expectations were, I think that then it's a non-starter. And I think also from us as the end users, right, to actually specifically say what we are expecting, what our expectations are, because I think very often we are necessarily clear, right? So when I talk to a physician, they say they want telemedicine and inject this into that process, right? But what does that really mean? Like, what are your expectations from these technologies? So I think just honesty from both sides, right, and communication of exactly what our expectations are. When it comes to technologies, being able to place those technologies on a network, but also interact with other platforms, right? So when we want to add machine learning or other tools to that, but then also being able to bring other data along with that as well, especially if you want to visualize, for example, when I'm assessing a patient or an animal, that I can bring, their clinical records and other pieces of information there. So those are some of the aspects that just jump out in addition to what already was described here. And I guess one is the UX, right? So the user experience. These technologies, when you put them on your head, are not necessarily intuitive yet, right? It's not like you just turn on a button and it works. And so that's one of the aspects also that typically not during the COVID time, but right before COVID, we were already engaging with these. Is I walked around with the unit everywhere, one of those or two, because depending on the context of use for these technologies, and just let people try it out. Because when you have the whole program starting to, and then you bring 15, 20 people into the room and you just want to get it going, and none of them had the headset on before, it is challenging because again, it's not intuitive. So I think as technology evolves, for those taking as few steps as you can to actually start the program and get working with it is another aspect that would be very helpful.
I know that really resonates a lot, Szczepan. I know one of the things we always run into is people want to know how much something costs, and it's that favorite tech answer of it depends. And it depends because it just depends on what you need and how much you need and all the rest of that stuff. And it's never quite as linear as a point-to-point price, and that sets expectations and such like that. So yeah, definitely a great approach. I love the answer. So Rick, love to round out with you in terms of those two questions and what stands out to you, and how would you like to answer those?
I mean, really, all of it interests me, and really, it's what helps the people on the shop floor, and having, kind of like Brent was saying, having something watch over you that can see, not force you into being a robot and doing a job, but can watch and analyze what's going on, whether I'm picking the wrong part in a warehouse area or I assembled something upside down. I mean, those are all things that no matter how good work instructions get and we put information out there, being a person on the shop floor for the first time, it's very overwhelming. There's a lot at you. And if there's something sitting over the top of you that's looking down to make sure you're doing the job right the first time, and can, throw a little buzz on a watch that you're wearing or something, saying, hey, are you sure you did that right? Hey, check that. It looks like this was picked wrong or installed backwards. Those are huge things. And then if all that data was collected, I mean, for me, it's data. If I can get all of my data, that whole digital thread of what manufacturing data, product data, all up in the cloud for analytics, I think that's really the next step, is having everything available so you can predict future failures of your products out in the field or down the assembly line before they happen. I think that is going to be big for all companies, and just being able to look at all that data and do all that big data analytics. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense.
I agree. I think being able to look at that data now, because we have all the data, be able to aggregate things that we were not predicting before. Like you're saying, how many times were those boards installed upside down? How many times were those screws put in the wrong place? It can also help us to make our work instructions better, can make our processes better, and so on. Where before we just said, oh, it was installed wrong today. That's it. Nobody really tracked it or whatever, you know what I mean? But seeing the pattern, seeing where the problems start to, congregate, right? Where you start to see those things happen all the time. Well, maybe we do need to go back and, design for manufacturing and excellence and fix our problems. And that was possible because we have all these data points now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I want to ask a couple last questions. I think we have enough time for them. One, real quick, and Rick, I want to go back to you and start with you. What are some best practices that you've come across to marry these technologies that you've seen work with on your side?
For us, it's best practices to marry would be going through a robust proof of concept model, like I mentioned earlier, and really understand that these new technologies aren't here because I should have them. They're here because they're going to solve problems for us. And so if it's not going to solve a problem, we're going to sweep it to the side or take some time to really understand that technology and what problems it can solve. Maybe we have those problems and we just didn't know. We didn't know that there was a solution out there for that problem. We've just always accepted it. That's the way it's always been done. But really defining a first proof of concept and really, scrutinizing the heck out of that new technology before you adopt it.
Yeah. So Nick, how about y'all and your side? What's some good practices you've seen?
I would say being able to vet the software or hardware ahead of time, being able to be on their dev teams or, beta teams to help solve these problems, right? As you see them all the time in the industry. I think that's one of the things that we need to do to help the tech grow faster. And then also, as mentioned earlier, if we get the tech into people's hands earlier, even if it's just sprinkling it here and there, having, open houses or whatever, then I think that the adoption of them are much simpler because people know how to use them.
Nice. And Szczepan, on your side, what are some best practices you've seen on the adoption side?
I think one I'll mention here is, in addition to whatever other folks already said, right, but also collaboration, right? I think that's a big point pre-competitively for us coming together, not just within our industry, pharmaceutical industry, but with all of the other industries, right, that you see here sitting and others. I think that's going to be the fastest way, and we have seen that with other technologies, but that's going to be the fastest way to get adaptation of these technologies. So for us in our industry, it helps us, but also our patients, right? And again, that's why we're here to help them. So that's the biggest point. I think if we can figure out a way how to collaborate.
And then last but not least, Brent and Shawn, what would y'all say about best practices around this?
I think our best practices start with safety, quality, and production first and foremost with our users. But then we also use the wrap and extend method. If we can wrap around the existing technologies that we have and then extend from that, I think that gives us our biggest response there. Brent, I'll give you the last word there.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I would say the only thing that I would recommend that people haven't talked, or in addition to what people have talked about so far, is that first and foremost, you really need to tie it to the business need so that we're not just showing technology for technology's sake, but how we can use this to improve safety, efficiency, quality, productivity, and really tie those benefits in so that it becomes that we're addressing the pressing needs of the business. That's when you'll get people's attention, and that's when things will really start to accelerate.
Yeah, I love it. And so in the theme of what we're talking about, people, as we end this up, I'd like to ask each one of you this question as a chance to do a quick message out to those that are listening. One of the things all this technology sounds great. All these things happen. We look at these things, Szczepan kind of alluded to it a little bit. You start getting to the HIPAA side, you start getting people concerned. Oh my gosh, it's not just at the job that somebody's looking over my shoulder, but my entire life it's being changed dramatically in terms of how we do business, in terms of almost an invasion, if you will, of things and jobs being replaced and things of that nature, of entire skill sets being replaced in a sense. So to that, from some of the fear that's created from that, and Shawn and Brent, I'd like to start with y'all. Can you just tell somebody out there, if there's a little bit of fear, a little bit of angst around that, what are some messages you'd have to those that are feeling that way?
Absolutely. We haven't come across too many people that have that fear yet, honestly. And if they are a little bit hesitant, we just give them the product to play with, pretty much. Here, play with this. We definitely don't want to go into their area, their reality, and cause an issue, a safety problem for them. That they have this apparatus on their head that they're not familiar with or anything. So right now, working with the willing, and there's a long line of willing right now. And then just bringing those along that are a little bit hesitant and letting them see how it works, I think is the key.
What I would add to that is you can also reinforce the benefits so that it's not scary. We want to make sure that we're not seen as headhunters, and we present the technology in a way of having digital assistants. Instead of having an evil overlord, what if you had a digital assistant that could provide you recommendations, based upon your need. And plus, always, when you have full headsets like the HoloLens, sometimes it can make you more attractive. I'd
also like to say, based on what you guys are saying, is that, if if we communicate with them, right? If we're actually listening to what the end users are saying, and take that information and try to input it into what they think is going to work for them, they feel like they're heard. They're going to adopt that technology a lot faster because they feel like they're part of the whole system.
Yeah, no doubt. And so Rick, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would say involve people on the shop floor early. So, and people of all types and shapes, sizes, whatever you want to say, ages. It really get them involved early. And for what we do, we kind of flip that, kind of that push backwards and say, okay, here's technology, here's problems that you've shown us in the past that we've struggled solving. But here's some new technology that can help solve those problems. And then usually the adoption is really, really simple from there. So.
And last but not least, Szczepan, how would you like to end that in terms of messaging out there to everybody?
No, so just to add what everybody else has already said, I think, it's education. How does technology can be helpful and assist with the specific aspects, right? And I think the other part also is just having, workshop where people can actually access the technology, even if you're not even thinking about for that specific function or role. But for them to engage with it, have an understanding of it, and for them even then come up, right, with different scenarios. That's what we have done and worked quite well, where they come up with different scenarios where it could work with their function and increase their productivity and in various other aspects, operational, as well as with, assessments, as I mentioned, with patients or is it with animals. So I think, again, just education, it goes a long way. It takes time to do that, but it has a pretty significant impact and kind of helps us move forward with this technology and other technologies as well.
Well, great. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, not only today, but before. Extremely valuable information. And with that, we'll wrap this up and look forward to the Q&A.